we are, Book of Code. I'm sorry, Book of Code. We're not Book of Code. We're FloridaJS. We meet every single first Tuesday of the month. We are always looking forward to having yourself, and not just me, speak and share your knowledge. Even if there's something you know just a little bit of, there's something you know just a little bit more than somebody else. So sharing that information is always good. I have loved TypeScript for a very long time since I first heard about it. So I would love to share what I know about it with the rest of you. But again, one more time, I'm going to ask you to interrupt me, stop me, ask me some different questions, and you'll see everything about it that we can. So let me see. I will go ahead and please give me a second. I will go ahead and make it so that this gentleman here that's talking to you right now can share his screen. Let's go ahead and do that. So before I start, do any questions, anything, or you'd like to hear more about TypeScript as well? Perfect. All right, so let me get that out of the way. So my name is Damian Montero. I am one of the teachers at Boca Code. Please excuse the fact there's logo there. I am being very lazy today, and I'm just simply utilizing one of the slides that we have always ready for our information here. That allows me to, really get to the nitty-gritty and really talk about, what is it that we're learning, what's in TypeScript and what's going on in there. So, you can ignore the fact that it's local. Let's talk more about what you can do it and what it feels. And some of you mentioned that you were working with it. Steve's an expert on it. I know that for a fact. And so he will definitely interrupt me when I ever do any kind of mistakes. Go ahead, Kevin, and do the same if you see that as well. So why is it that we want to learn? What are we getting? And first and foremost, and I didn't get this over here, if you want to know, we'll learn something that Jean-Marie really loves, which is the why, right? We care a lot about why sometimes. We want to know what problem are we solving. After all, it's not just okay to just use the latest, greatest. We need to know why we're using the latest, greatest, and what kind of things we're talking about. We'll talk about type annotations, compile time checking, interfaces, enums, generics. We won't go too much into it, I promise, Larry. So, you can join us still, even if you get to that. And then we'll talk about functions and expressions and different things like that. But really, well, this is not really, I thought the next slide was the why, but really, let me show you. This isn't why you want to know, but I don't know if you're interested. It was invented by Microsoft. Yeah, boo, Microsoft, right? So, but it was meant from Microsoft back in 2012. It was created by Anders, and you will excuse me if you know how to pronounce that last name better than I, please help me out here. He is the inventor of Pascal, as well as Delphi, and if you know it, C#. So some of the things come from C#, but really the problem was that they were trying to solve a problem. It is 100% open source. So right now, tomorrow, if Microsoft is fairly open source, fairly friendly to developers, I would say so. Maybe you disagree, but even if tomorrow they decided not to, they no longer control of it, right? It is open to the world and has already been given out to the world, and it pretty much is in a good spot as what it is. It's the default of Angular, the front-end language, and Dino, the creator of Node, now has moved on to Node. To Dino, and that's what it is. And for example, React can be done in TypeScript, and Node can be done in TypeScript, and it is a great invention and all that. So it is also the number 2 most favorite language according to statistics from Stack Overflow's personal, questionnaire that they send to any developers. It is something that I think you will see really changes everything. There is a little bit of that growth, a little bit of that problem of trying to figure out, can I go ahead and learn more about it? How do I, contribute, or more importantly, how do I go ahead and, learn about it without having to tear my hair out and end up looking like Damian, like the guy that's talking, which I happen to be bald if you haven't seen me already. But it's you'll see there's a lot of benefits, and here's the biggest ones. You see that? It's obvious, right? Which one's better? Please, do I have to even point it out? By the way, it's exactly the same. One of the points we always make when we talk about TypeScript is that TypeScript is a subset. So JavaScript is a subset of TypeScript. So if you can think about it, every single thing that is valid in JavaScript is valid in TypeScript. It is it is first and foremost a JavaScript language with additions on top. So think of it like, and I've heard people put the analogy: if you are the kind of person that knows what C and C++ is, it's the C++ to C, right? C being JavaScript in this analogy. It's the improvements that JavaScript will make, and this is key. One of the things that we get with TypeScript is we get all the benefits, all the chit chat, all the things that we've been promised from JavaScript. We get it first in TypeScript. So back in 2013, 2014, where you could just run it along with Node, along with JavaScript, along with compiled languages, what we were getting is some of the things we got first, things that we were not going to get to JavaScript until much later. I think classes was one of them. We got it first in TypeScript. And so therefore, it's as if you want to be that beta tester, that person that gets ahead of the game, knows what happens before, TypeScript's your game. For anybody that, my goodness, my voice changed there for a second. I guess I'm going through puberty again. For anybody who realizes this is actually React and all that, and if you use the Create React app, there is a template. So if you create React app, your project, and then --template space TypeScript, Create React app will create a project in React that is in TypeScript. So you get all the benefits, all the types, all the different things you need to utilize TypeScript going forward without you doing too much work. Oh, talking about that, I only almost as if I knew, and I made this own thing, and we presented it to the students a little while ago. There it is. There's a line. Go ahead and take a snapshot if you do anything in the rest of the world. If you're interested in creating a React app in TypeScript and trying it out, go ahead and do so by just getting the script on there. So let's look at that. There is something called coercion. I hate the word. I think it sounds awful. Maybe I have too many things in my mind, but this is the trick where we start a variable in A, as you see in the let. We move forward right there. Let me see if you can see my mouse. You can still see my mouse. We move forward. And now we can say, what this is type string. Obviously, because it's a let, we can change it. All of a sudden, we've changed it to number 1. There's no problem, not whatsoever. Type, oh, it's a number now. And this sounds like an easy thing, but for example, this is almost related to how we have to solve this issue in document databases, where all of a sudden we want to put an age of someone, and we want to order them by the age. How good are those wines that are 10 years old compared to those silly wines that are only 2 years old? We want to compare those wines by age. We do that, and all of a sudden, someone has entered information where the age is in a quote 10, and that's a different number. And so TypeScript tries to solve that in the code. And one of the things, right? So, the JavaScript coercion, it's not a bug, it's a feature. We have this beautifulness that we can do that, but it's going to cause us problems. And everybody that has seen typecasting languages like C++, like, C# and all the different language, Java, we use types for a reason. And how do we use them how do we add them to JavaScript while still keeping it looking like JavaScript? Well, they decided not to change the let. We normally would be in any other languages, if you know them, would sort of change the type to the left. We would not use the word var or let or const. We would therefore give it a type that is defined, that tells it it's a variable. But in JavaScript, for different reasons, they had an issue with that, and so they put it to the right. So this is something we're just going to have to get used to. It lives on the right-hand side, and then yes, type conversion. It goes ahead and we define what it is. So there isn't much to it. You're seeing everything in there. There it is. We define a number. Why do we define a number? In the case of this, just to let you know, that first let number right up here is valid TypeScript because, and it's not going to complain because it's smart enough to go and say, okay, well, this is an unusual case. You gave me a hard-coded number. I don't have to guess what it is. So I know it's a number. So this is actually valid JavaScript. It will be perfectly happy with that. So that means that no matter what you do, this is perfectly fine. But if we want it in other methods where we have a function that's coming in, then we're really going to define how it is. And here's the saying. There's a saying, I don't know if I have it a little bit later. I think I do. But TypeScript means that instead of getting silly problems during your development, you could have major issues doing production. That's what you're going to get. That's what you're not going to get if we use TypeScript. You will have these silly issues where you fight a little bit with the language, and then all of a sudden you don't have any issues when you go live to production. That's what we have with types, and that's what we have with TypeScript. So that's the things we do with nothing. Now, let's get a little bit fancy, right? Let's look at languages and strings, strings. There it is, some more. They look all the same, except for those silly colons. And then we have to define these types in the back. And the only unusual thing, this might be easy peasy for you, hopefully it is. The only unusual thing is the arrays. So this is what an empty array looks like. We now have defined not only that it's a string, but it's an array of strings. And here we can continue down with things like array of objects, array of booleans, array of numbers, and even multiple different ways of doing that. By the way, one more time, if there is any questions, any comments, any issues, please turn on your volume. We are not trying to make you mute in any which way. You're welcome to say something about what's going on. And
can I add something here, since you are
please,
so kind?
Kevin, talk to me.
So this is fantastic. So there's also another way by inference. The TypeScript will let's on the line 1, right? Let name. For some reason, I'm crazy enough. Or lazy enough, actually. I don't want to even care about the type. I'll just say let name is equal to bananas.
Yes.
Let the TypeScript can actually inference for me. That is also
right.
Another way of, let the TypeScript work for me than me trying to type it. Just put out there.
100%. Absolutely. And it worked with this way, but it's only working this way because of the fact that we've hard coded, right? If we had not hard coded, if we were getting it from an API, we were getting it from database, we're getting it inside of a function, then it cannot do that inference and all that. So absolutely, there's no problems with that. And in fact, a lot of times TypeScript will not even hint at anything as long as you have that let in front of it. So the only thing
I have a quick question.
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Yes, talk to me.
I guess you're gonna talk about it later, but what happens when you have an array of different types, like
excellent. So absolutely. So sometimes we have we allow JavaScript to have an array of that, something unusual thing where we only yes, Kevin, that's exactly what we use. We have one issue, and let me address that one first, which is this amazing capability of JavaScript to go and say, I want to put a string in an array, and then all of a sudden another string, and all of a sudden a number, and then all of a sudden another string. And normally what would happen is that's cute and fantastic and a wonderful experiment, but in true, I won't say in true life, in normal circumstances as a developer, that probably means something happened wrong, right? Or that should be something that we should sort of cast one particular way, you know what I mean? So change it. Now, what Kevin's talking about, I love this already, is tuples. So with tuples, pardon me, there is something to it, and I think I have a slide on here, but there is a way to go and say, this is an array specifically of a string and a number. And although we have those in C# and Java, I've never understood why. This is different than, for example, having an array of objects where you would have different types in the object. An object that defines all the students of my school could have name as a string and an age with a number, right? We're all this, after all, age is just a number. So, you know what I mean? We could just consider that and not get crazy with the fact that, oh, the fifth element is always the age of my array and things like that. So I don't know. And please tell me if you ever seen a use for a tuple that made sense. I'd love to hear about it. I come from the C# world, so I know them well, but I've never understood why. And even with a tuple, we define specifically when it is 2 strings and a Boolean or 2 strings and a number or something like that. And again, Kevin, have you seen tuples being
Yeah,
used?
so it's probably like more extending, right? So JavaScript, you can have an array. In JavaScript, there's no type specificity. So in an array, I can have a integer like numbers and then strings and the boolean as a mixed up.
Oh,
So
yes.
probably they're just trying to extend the same into the TypeScript. That's why they came up with the tuple. But I agree with you. It's really weird use case where I'm actually Googling. I never seen like a real world, like a reality, wherein an array consisting of these, non-uniform type, whereas
Right.
it's a number or string or boolean. So I agree with you, but I think they're just putting out there since JavaScript supports that.
Absolutely.
Tuple is, I think that's, if there's a use case, may not be the normal use case, but
if there's a use case, I'm okay with it. I would just like to find it. I don't mind being wrong. In fact, I don't consider it being wrong. I've been considered being learning. I mean, so that's what I would love to hear more about it. So, okay, well, let's remind ourselves that there is sometimes some needs for something we don't have in JavaScript enough, which is this enums. And you've come from other languages, you know what these are. These are these wonderful bits of information where we can say something is hard-coded to a particular lab value. I'm old enough to remember when we would say a status. Let's just say a status of an employee. We all are working for an HR company. Congratulations, you've all been hired by me. And we now working at this HR company, and we have just 4 positions for these companies: teacher, assistant, marketing, and sales. I don't know why we only have these 4 positions. That's all we do. And we would put position 1, teacher would be, position 1, and position 2 would be assistant, as in what we record on the database, instead of recording the quotes and putting lots of strings. So instead, all of a sudden, we have enums. And those really become something that we can instantly see. And you see them most, and what I normally do when we teach this at this clue is we jump into Visual Studio. And if everybody needs to or would like me to, I can do that. But we can do it here in in fact, I'll just sort of stop here. Whoa, excuse me. We can even do things that it might be obvious. So an employee types dot, and I'll get these as lists. So now I don't have to explain to that new developer, that junior developer, the developer's been there for 20 years but never touched this part of the code, how we call the marketing department people. They just type in employee types dot, and there's a number. And it's always the same number, and it's always the same number in the database. And when they confirm and they check it out, it's perfectly fine. And what you don't know, and I know because of the fact that this happens with a C#, is you can also do things like this. And so this makes no sense here, but it might make a sense if you wanted to know something specifically, like the tax form for unemployment. Anybody know what that number is? I certainly don't. So we could just go tax form dot unemployment, and then all of a sudden it would come in 1445. Great. So now we didn't have to remember that tax form, and now we can just type in something in an English way that we can never make mistakes, or at least the mistakes are more difficult, later on down the ride, and we don't make silly mistakes with small things. So yeah. So we're getting a question from Maritas. Maritas, yes, and feel free to unmute yourself, but I'll read it. Why workdays with capital letters? Why start the capital letters in TypeScript? We do not have to type capital letters. This is an excellent point. Gio, please tell me if I'm speaking wrong here, or anybody else team working hard. I guess I'm so old that my variables do not work in camel case, where the first letter is in lowercase and the other was in uppercase. There is no reason for this other than I'm really old. That's all. Or maybe stupid. Whatever the case may be, I like my variables uppercase, just I think because it's PowerPoint and Google Slides, and so therefore it's easy for me to do that. But you know what I mean? It is something that we should think about.
I can just chime in here.
Tell me.
I think it's more of enums are like more of convention, right? Like instead of declaring constants like A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, it's like kind of constant. So more of convention generally, if you come up from other languages, like you mentioned, C, C#, or Java, constants are supposed to be like, uppercases, generally conventionally. So in that sense, enums.
But all uppercases, right? Kevin, do you have them all uppercases?
For a constant, yeah, that's true.
Yes.
But
I've seen exactly that, yeah.
Yeah. So in that kind of extending, so there's no like I think syntactic error. It could be also lowercase, but
Yes.
generally, kind of I don't know whatever case it's called. The way I typed in, right? So first one is the capital, and then it's more of readability. I would say. I think I don't see any syntactic error. It's more of a convention.
Absolutely, 100%. There is a caveat here. React, the components have to be in uppercase, so that's why we normally put the variables in lowercase. But I think you're right. It is just the way we do it. As I tell everybody, it's not the way the world does it. It's how your team does it. How you do it, or how your team does it, how the other developers in your company have, how you all have agreed should be the right way. And I'm okay with any one of the ways you decide I'm going to join your team and do it that way and all that. And I think it's just conventions.
And the document says that capital case, the document says that first letter of each word has to be capital. That's what the TypeScript document is. The example they've given is that. I'm not sure that's like a
I'm talking about React. And React, they like the components to have uppercase. In fact, React will complain with it if not. So, I mean, I'm just saying that's something with React. Just pointing out that was the only case I know where it's very, very important. But I've been pointing this out with several different things and all that. So one of the things that I also want to point out is, as a reminder to everybody, variables are just words that us human beings understand. In fact, I come from South America. My language, when I was born, when I was a kid, until I was 9 years old, in Spanish. You can tell from my accent. And so that was a joke. Well, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was because of my accent. And so one of the things you can tell is that these words not only don't have to be upper or lowercase, they can be anything you wish. And in fact, they don't have to be in English. And that's something that we have to be aware of. Certain things new, enum has to be in English. Some of the other words you're going to see a little later have to be in English, but the variables do not. So just something very interesting. But I love that conversation. Thank you, everybody. And because of that, I quickly went ahead and changed the next slide to remind us. And so I'm using lowercase in my variables. As you can see, I learned from my mistakes. So one of the things that we can sometimes do is and this is not as unusual as people think, we sometimes have to define it as both, or more specifically, one of two things. So in this case, you might think that it says that code is a string. And what's that pipe doing, right? What that pipe is doing is saying that it's a string or a number. And you might find that very strange, and maybe it's obvious when it comes to a code. But just for example, remember that in Canada, our zip codes, up in Canada, the zip codes are letters and numbers. And here in the United States, they're just numbers. So if we wished to put something like zip codes, although it's called something else in Canada, and we just wanted to do that, we could do that, right? Kevin knows this because he's from Canada and all that. That was doing it for you, Kevin. I knew you were there from Canada. I could tell from that Canadian flag behind you or the Canadian accent you have. So that's one of the things that we can think about. And so there are times, and in fact, this one comes with a lot of times when we see, and we're going to talk about this, what we get back from a method. Because sometimes we will get something back, but for example, when we query a database, a document database, the way we do it normally is we say, find me, say, a user with a username this and a password of this. We just did this today at the school. And great. And sometimes you put in the wrong password. So when we do that, we don't get the user back. So we can't go, we're going to get a user back. Sometimes we get a null. In other words, there is no user that we are trying to find. So it's perfectly fine to go and say it's of type user or null. And that's what this union's called. So we can always put both of those in there. So we can say in this case, this example is this is valid. And if we do this one in here, my dog doesn't agree that it's valid, but it is, regardless of what she thinks it is. I'm telling you it's valid. Yes, it is. I know. You don't believe me. It is. So she really has an opinion on that, and I value that very much. So this is also valid. So as you can see, it is a string, and it is a number. Now, this can cause issues. Maybe this is a bad example, but in certain situations, you'll see that it becomes an obvious thing for you to do. And one of the examples that's so much easier for me is that one. We're either going to get a user back from the database, or we're going to get a null, as in the user's not found. Their search query didn't bring anything, or there's simply no users in the database. You better get some new friends. So that's what we have to talk about. And by the way, I'm going a little bit fast. We do slow down at the school, and we'll just slow down with different things. But one of the things that I want to remind you is that you can feel free to interrupt. And also, once this is over, once we talked about this, we can open the floor and we can let everybody, in the conversation. You are in the conversation now, so please join us if you wish. But it is something in there. So Kevin is saying they haven't seen a lot of different reasons. That one of them is that one, Kevin. Is when you make a query to a document database, MongoDB, Firestore, Cassandra. One of those things comes back as either the user, a legitimate user with all the information the user, or it's null. And that's where here we use it the most. That's where literally I used it today. We sometimes forget that in a function, we have variables. Those variables at the top, those arguments, those parameters, depending on which side of the function you're talking about, we do have to define them. And these, and please excuse me, I didn't mean to put them in upper. This is definitely where it should not be in uppercase. Let me correct that. This is lowercase and lowercase. So that's important. That's a type. That's not a variable that we can call anything we'd like. So in this case, the function should come back and expect to know what it's going to be passed. And for example, when we talk about, we think about a function, we might go ahead and check. We might go ahead and check, did we get past an array in that array variable that you see on the right-hand side, that second parameter? And you have to check that, but you don't if it's TypeScript. If we have everything in TypeScript, we don't have pieces in JavaScript and other pieces in TypeScript, we don't have to check because TypeScript has checked for us. And in fact, when it compiles, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that, it becomes something that we can trust. We can trust that we're going to get an array. We're never going to get an integer or a number or a string or an object that we have to check. We don't have to worry about anything. We're going to get a number that is the index, that variable here, when we're trying to find something specific and all that. So that's one of the benefits right there. All right. Well, we're kind of jumping into it. One of the options we can get is, and we have to, and I meant to put it back in the functions also not only take something, you can see that this say hi function, that's a JavaScript function, a TypeScript function, takes in a message. That message is a string, right? That's what this string says here. But also what we found out is that this function doesn't return anything. And that's what void means. So looking into the void means looking into nothing, I believe. And so this is what we're talking about here. So in this case, we don't have to guess whether the function returns something at the very end. It's going to tell us it returns nothing. And more importantly, the system's going to tell us, hey, you have a return here. So maybe you're wrong. Maybe you should realize that sometimes you return nothing and sometimes you return something, perhaps returning an error on certain situations, or perhaps on the right conditions, on the right day, on the right weather, we return something. And the program is now, because of TypeScript, able to check that and let you know, hey, you think it's returning nothing. It's not. So go ahead and check again or figure out that. And you're like, oh my goodness, I just discovered a possible mistake. Now, it may be a small mistake in this situation. If you were expecting nothing to be returned, you're probably not going to set this variable to equal to anything, and therefore you're not going to have an issue. But it is something that we should be aware of. So, Kevin, void is not from Java. It is from a much older thing. It's I guess a philosophy thing. It is a word from C++. They also have void. And it is something, it's one of the first things you type in C. So it is a language. I'm not sure if it's included in other languages, but it is from other words. It definitely lives in Java, as you said, and C#, but it comes from different languages. And so that's we have it here. One of the things that I always remind people is sometimes we think of nulls. Well, null or undefined, isn't that like a void? No, those are actual in JavaScript, a valid reply. As I tell people, I used to work for a tower company. They make tower companies that where cell phone towers live in. So when you connect to your cell phone, you're connecting to a tower that was built by the company I worked at. Most likely, it's one of the largest in the United States. And so therefore we had to know how high the tower was off the ocean. And it could be 100-foot tower, or it could be minus 100 because it's below ocean. But you say, well, and I would tell you, well, what if it's not up? And you might say, it's 0, right? It's not up, it's 0. And I'd be like, no, it could be the very tip, could be at ocean level. And so therefore, technically, that's 0. It's a valid 0. The tower is up. It's located. It's been around for 20 years, and it's 0 height. And so we do have definitions of null and undefined, which are legitimate. So null could be like, no, I've not checked that. Or no, I don't have a value yet. I don't have it because it's not up. We don't know technically how high it will be of an ocean from that. So that's another way of saying void means absolutely nothing will come back from this method. Okay. All right. Those of you who know JavaScript know this, and those of you who know me know I love GIFs. I know you're looking at those GIFs, but know that the word any exists. I sometimes need to figure out that I don't know what this is going to come back. And I'm perfectly fine telling it that it's a string or a number, but sometimes it's any. And I'm going to stop the combination here. But sometimes we don't really know what's coming in down the pipe, or we're being lazy. The any is both the right answer and the wrong answer, sometimes at the right time. Schindler's, what's it called? Not Schindler's cat, but Schindler's variable. So in this one, we're okay saying that the complex object right now could be different types. If it's 2 different types, if it's one with a variable, one without, that'd be great. But I don't know which one it is. LK, please help me out here. How do you pronounce Schrodinger's cat? Schrodinger's cat. That's right. Sounds like something I have to go see a doctor for. So I love that, and it's fantastic. This is one of them. When we don't really know what it isn't 2 types. It isn't even 3 types or 4 types or 5 types. If we know it's going to be either an object with the word variable and an object with the word name, or an object with the word name and variable, you know what I mean? That's fine. We know it's all one of these 3, no problem. But sometimes we don't know what's coming in when there's something being sent in and all that. So it is something that we say. Yes, Kevin, it's not preferred, but it is something that sometimes we have to think about when we have to code. Sometimes we need to present it and just go forward in our lives, but it is something we want to go back. But sometimes there's a legitimate reason. Any is something you should avoid, as Kevin has reminded us, but it isn't something that you should hate. It is something that we can live with. Sometimes we don't have an answer, and the any will be a fine answer for now. Maybe forever. All right. So I've said to you, in my situation, I'm going to go back here for a second. I know that I'm getting a reply back from the API, from the database, and it's different types of shapes of data. And it isn't an any, because I know what it is. And it isn't array or a string or some of the simple complex or simple types. It is something complex, and we know exactly the shape. It is super complex, but we know exactly the shape of the data. That's where interfaces come in. And yes, this interfaces is from Java, from C++, please excuse me, from C#. And please correct me. I don't think we had interfaces in C++. I know we didn't have them in C. I am that old, but I don't know. I don't remember them ever being in C++. An interface is essentially, it is an abstract class. I was going to say it's not a class because you can't instantiate it. It's an abstract class. It is a type. Here's where we define that we will create a type human. It will have a name and a height, an age, and I'm going to have a status of married. You're either married or you're not. You're not halfway married, right? Sorry to tell you. And so, you know what I mean? Those are the things that we define. And this is not a class. We don't inherit from this. What we say is, we're going to create an object, and the object will have this shape of data. And that way we can say, my method, my function will return that shape of data. And so this is one of the ones, how we do it. Just bear with me here. I'm going to blow my nose. It's a good thing this is this is a remote class, right? Or a remote class. Please excuse me, a remote meetup. Please do not think of this as a class. Please share anything you'd like to do. This is not a class. Kevin says, if you remember, you can multiple inherit in C++, not needed interfaces, and so not in C++. You're right. Google C++ says abstract classes to simulate interfaces. You're right. Absolutely. Thank you, Larry. So that is, yep, absolutely. I love this. I love this contribution with everything. Thank you for that.
Hey,
so it
question.
is. Yes, please, Rex.
Is there any runtime component to TypeScript, or is it all like done at a pre-compiled level?
It is a great question. I guess I never even jumped into that. Thank you for Rex. Let's talk a little bit about that. We transcribe,
transpile.
Help me out here.
Transpilation.
So we don't compile because we're not changing from a computer language to a binary zeros and ones. We don't even do that sort of last minute compilation that Java, C# do. We are combining, we change from TypeScript to Java. There is a compilation. There is a TSC, and that's a TypeScript compiler. It is part of the, when you install TypeScript locally or on your project as an npm TypeScript, you will see that there is a compiler in there. If you have the template of React, it installs in the project the transpiler for you. So it converts from TypeScript over to JavaScript. Now, we can load them live. So Rex, it's a yes, no kind of an answer. Yes, it's compiled, but also there is a live to it. NodeMon, what I as a developer use to create Node applications, will understand TypeScript if set up correctly. And so therefore I can instantly run my code using something called, as we've seen here from Larry, TS Node. Thank you, Larry. And so that one allows us to be dynamic. I can make a small change to my backend, press save, instantly the system is reloaded. I have now a new version. Same thing with my React, with my Angular. The second I click on save, boom, the whole page is reloaded instantly. None of the states are changed, and I have my new changes in the page. And so therefore, we do get the benefits of the fact that it feels like it's runtime, it's like instant. But when we're ready to push it to the production, it's in JavaScript you have to push it. Right? There are ways the production server can run TS Node, and so therefore it's going up there. But if we want to push it up to some of the Lambda functions on AWS, the Google functions, the Azure functions, the Vercel functions, they have to transpilation over to TypeScript. So TypeScript has to be what we have to end up with, and we have to send them TypeScript. We have a build script that uses a TSC compiler. So we do have to change those things. So we do get the benefits of live coding, but we have the other ones. All right. We have a question from Rod. Do you know of a way to run TypeScript in the browser to avoid external tooling, so I could use JavaScript with types in the browser directly? Yes and no, Rod. So normally there is a way to do that if you're using Vue, React, or Angular in TypeScript. You will not need to do anything. The existing projects, the React scripts, the Angular compilers will look at the TypeScript, will instantly convert them, and in the browser you will see my goodness, you will see JavaScript, but it will act like your TypeScript has been defined. So it's instant compilation. So you almost get that. And with Babel and WebKit, Webpack, there are ways. There you go. Kevin already knows that. There are ways that you can get that instantly reloaded. And with the browser, what's called browser link, or those things that listen, that's what listens to your files. The second it's changed, it can reload the page and instantly have you do that. So there is no way, types, like I always remind people, the browser doesn't understand JSX from React. The browser doesn't understand TypeScript. The browser doesn't understand Rust, doesn't understand C#, but Blazor and WebAssembly and TypeScript compilers and all those things make the browser convert things to the words that the browser knows, which is JS, CSS, and HTML, which are the only things it knows. So there's always ways to get us to work on the languages that we're comfortable with, that we're getting the benefits on, but at the same time, still see the code on our JavaScript the way we do it. So the answer is yes, but there's a little bit of work to do. But the future. Yes, Kevin.
Sorry, no, I was actually, I could chime in actually.
Yes, please.
I didn't mean originally, but the browsers are actually few years lagging behind the technology. That's why these Babel or any of these tools, right? So instead of we waiting for these browsers to catch on, there are these intermediate, they're like, you can call them like language translators, right? So they're actually translating for the browsers can understand. So browsers are basically lagging by few years. That is
Absolutely.
so. Yeah, that's the whole reason. So we waiting for the browsers to catch on. We're just providing some translators so that give what browsers can understand.
Absolutely, and we do that for like you said perfectly. Thank you, Kevin. Like you said, for existing JavaScript that's 100% JavaScript and 100% supported and 100% in the specs, but not supported by your one browser. We do have the transcribes, transpolations, which can change the modern JavaScript for older JavaScript. We used to do this all the time for different things. It was always a pain because I would have to do some kind of translation, but in Node, where I could control the language of the JavaScript, I could have it right away.
Yeah, so, the reason I ask is I work on Google AppScript, which is essentially JavaScript, and the company I work for does not. It's like getting an act of Congress passed, basically, to get anything. So if I could use the browser, I wouldn't have any issues, but using external tools, I'd have to jump through so many hoops to be like a true developer and have a nice environment and everything. So that's kind of why I was wondering if I could do it solely within the browser, or at least a better typing system.
There is something like that. Now, if you want to, let me just jump to it. Now, this is a browser website. A website. Of course, the space is here so you can type it out yourself. If you go to typescriptlang.org/play, and /play on purpose, I know that's not what you meant, Rex, but if you wanted to experiment, learn while on the job or while the job computer is there and they don't let you install something, you can see some of the work there. And I think with some of the amazing work in JSM, with WebAssembler, we may be able to get some of these things in the browser technically without any transpolations or anything like that. So that's just something that we can see. This particular website lets you play with it, show it off. Then the conversation could be, let's use Babel. Are you okay with Babel with certain settings? And Babel will translate and get it, your code onto that. The other thing might be a conversation with the bosses, with the, trying to pass an act of Congress about, can we use React? Can we use Angular? And then those instantly have that built in. Okay. So that's just an option with that.
If I can joke around, right, for a second,
Please.
Just making it light, and without offending any Microsoft followers, how many years it took for the Microsoft to catch on with Edge over the Internet Explorer, right? So,
absolutely.
So if you think convincing your boss is a Congress Act, I think getting a browser is like a whole galaxy, agreeing to that. I don't know. Just joking around.
No. I think it's a big deal. Kevin, it looks like you and me are the same age, grew up in the same country, it looks like as well. And one of the things is that, I was there. I was there when I was working at Microsoft at Skype and Microsoft, both of the companies. And we had to struggle. We had to struggle because we needed to support different things. Rex, just like you and Microsoft, they allowed us to use jQuery. And this was a time when jQuery was one of the last oldest things stuck around, and that was the only thing we were allowed to use. We're not allowed to use Bootstrap. We're not allowed to use some of the other things that would have made life easier for me. I was in the marketing department, making marketing websites. I wasn't a marketer I was a web developer in the marketing department. And so in those companies, it was exactly as you said. And so I hear you. And we were pulling our hair out. That's why I don't have any left about, our own browsers at Microsoft and how dare, and we would make a choice. We made a choice and we would justify it by seeing that other companies made a choice. So we would support only Internet Explorer 9. And that was already a stretch. That was already meant that there was 1 or 2 days extra in every 2 days, 2-week sprint of just trying to be fighting for 2 days on it's been working in every other browser. It's been working on technically 97.7% of the world. Why do I have to support these 2.3% of these people, right? Can we just ask them on a big pop-up, please upgrade. I'll pay you money, right? You tell them what to do and all that.
Ask any web developer, right? What are their war stories? Any web developer, I challenge anywhere in the world, right? What are their war stories? Making your application work for the, without offending Microsoft followers. Internet Explorer is their, I think, war stories,
If we need to offend anybody right now, the Internet Explorer is called Safari. Sorry, if you like Macs, I have 2 in front of me. Okay. We have a customer right now where we've made some magic. They did a musical instrument on the web, and they are super happy. And I literally have to tell them, you cannot play it on Safari. And they were like, oh, just you haven't spent on it? I have spent 2.5 weeks trying to get it to play noise. And I can get it to play once, but the second the sound starts, it's gone. And I have 23 years experience in JavaScript. I have 23 years experiencing on the web. I don't know how, I don't know why. 1999, when I first started this business, this world, they threw me as a website guy. And I didn't know what a website was, but that's what I started. And I cannot get Safari to work. Modern Safari, not my G3 Mac, the brand new iPhone 14 before it's out. It cannot play the website from the music that plays on every other device out there. So it's still out there. It's still out there. So trans compilers are still going to be something.
I think this is all answering Rod's question, right? So if I were you, I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't wait for the brothers to,
to catch up. You're right.
Yeah.
All right, time, folks, it is time. That's it. It is time for you to let me know what you think. It is time for us to talk, to let us know how you feel. Tell me, I see it says, I think Kevin you brought up some things over there in chat. Let me know what you want to learn from next. I don't want to stop the conversation. I want to continue that conversation with everybody here. What I'm trying to say that is, let me know what you're interested in TypeScript. Let me know. Let's continue this conversation. What other browsers can we complain about? I'm here all day. Let's see.
Has anyone worked with Dino yet? You had mentioned it in your slide earlier.
Yes, Ron. I have not. Has anybody else tried it?
Isn't Bun the new Dino?
Yes, that's exactly what I heard, Anthony. I heard exactly what you heard about. So if you don't know it, it's another Bun, and it's a competitor. I wouldn't call it a competitor to Dino. Would you call that, Anthony, that? I mean, I
don't know enough about it. I just heard.
I agree.
Like
when it came to Dino, I think one of the things. So if anybody doesn't know, the org, let me see if I can, I can quickly do this. Let me see, creator.
Ryan Dahl, the same guy. The Ryan is the first name.
Thank you, my friend. That's
last
it.
Last name is DAHM. So Ryan Dahl.
Ryan Dahl, yes. So Ryan Dahl. So this is how I tell the story. I was fascinated. The creator of PHP is in love with PHP and wants to know the world that they should change to PHP 8 or 9. And he says he's made so many improvements, the team, him, and everybody, that if there's so many people running it in WordPress and all those things, that if everybody switched, then all of a sudden, all the web servers in the world would use half the power. That's how much power the new optimized version of PHP improves. That's how much power PHP has. The creator of Vue loves it, feels passionate about it. makes a living out of it. He loves it. He's been talking about it. The creators of Angular and React have been on this group before. They're passionate about it. They love it. Everybody loves what they do because they're passionate about it. That's why they do it. The creator of Node, within 2 years, was like, Node sucks. I'm out of here. He left Node, and then all of a sudden he says, Node, the problem was Node in N-O-D-E? We made that backwards. We should have called it Dino. And we decided to revolutionize everything. I was there in that convention when he announced it, and it was ridiculous. I mean, it was all sorts of great improvements we now see in Node. And I think what happened with him is that NPN, which is a corporation that makes money. NPN is a corporation, not a nonprofit. It's not there from the goodness of our heart. We don't give money. The church money we drop on Sunday does not go to them. It is something that's available, and he was just mad that he didn't get that money. So I think, there you go. Steve is showing us, if you go to dino.land, you can find more about it. I'm not talking bad about it. I find that, for example, a lot of the benefits that Dino has, the second I run Node in TypeScript, I get, right? Because that's also what the things he said. He should have done it in TypeScript the whole time. Okay, great. He should have had everything loaded in modules. I don't understand why, but okay, we have those, right? He should have done everything with, everything should have been a package. Everything should have been included equally. I don't see the problem of Node. I make my living with Node. I'm happy with Node. It's amazing. I have not tried Dino, as you can see. So if anybody else has. Steve, have you tried Dino?
I have not tried Dino.
Yeah. It's from the same mind as the amazing mind of the creator of Node, right? I mean, it is an amazing thing. I think he could have. So it just sounds like someone giving up and saying, "Fine, I'll go play with my own toys," kind of thing.
Sorry, if any
Yes.
guys are old enough, right? Friends sitcom, right? So I think Node.js is like Friends sitcom, and then one of the guys from the Friends sitcom, they just spin off and they made their own show. But it's not as popular as Friends, We love that, but it's not as popular as Friends. So that's my take on the Dino and Node.
I think I hope they do well. I have a feeling all of us, with our knowledge of JavaScript, the moment we get into TypeScript and we comfortably, can manipulate it and use it, I think we'll get some great things. Right now, I even heard that Node will accept NPN packages. So at this moment, why not just call it Node 2.0, right? And just say we're moving that direction, right? Once we get all the different benefits out there, I don't see the big deal.
But lately, there's a remix actually that's getting more popular in the React world from, Can't See Dots, right? Remix.
Yes.
That's more, I think, instead of Node.js, if somebody's moving away from Node.js in React world, remix seems to be kind of direction they're trying to put, because Can't See Dots is definitely popular in React world, so he's trying to push
very, very
that.
popular. Now he was in React Miami. I don't know if you know, there was some funny guy with a bald head and funny glasses that was the host of React Miami earlier this year. Anyways, he was on there, a fantastic gentleman. Now there's some talk about Remix, but I wouldn't consider Remix a replacement for Node.
It's getting popular, getting the traction because of this popularity of the Can't See Dots, and the guys who actually did remixes from the React router guys, Michael Jackson and Ryan Florence. So obviously these three guys are more popular in the React world. So that's in that sense.
It would be, it's more a competitor to Next.js. I don't think it's a competitor to Node. Maybe I don't understand how it works well.
They're combining the Next.js with the Node, and they're saying it's getting more of a mixer of, the whole server side kind of thing, the remix. I didn't know much. I didn't venture yet, but remix seems to be taking that direction,
right?
If at all.
Right. So Kevin Pereira was asking about getting stuck. Now, Kevin Pereira, are you talking about getting stuck with TypeScript and getting to an error that you could not resolve? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was more speaking about getting stuck while studying JavaScript. Like I'll write some code, some sort of function, and then once I save it, bugs will come up. I'm like, all right, exactly what did I do that went wrong? So I feel like TypeScript's a good way to kind of find those bugs before they occur. was like reading some of the documentation before your intro, and yeah, I think it'll be definitely ideal to like jump back into JavaScript with.
Absolutely. In anything we do with JavaScript, it can get a little bit tough, a little bit hairy. And you're right. There's some things that if you don't know what's going on, it's a little bit tough. TypeScript helps with that. Sometimes it's easier, makes it easier for people that are like, wait a minute, I come from the type world. I expect to know if I'm holding a variable that it's a string, that I don't have to check if it's a number. I don't have to check if it's null. I can assume that's a case. And so those things where it really, really excels and comes forward and all that. So it says, Christian is asking, I'm new to, and I'm curious in a larger TypeScript project, how do you manage your custom types? I don't know how making a new type per React prop scales. So it's very easy, Christian. I've worked, the majority of the large projects I work for in JavaScript are not in JavaScript, they're in TypeScript. We have modified them all. The latest project I just handed in this morning, and hopefully we'll get paid soon. And you know that always works. They want you to get the work done, but you know when it comes to payment, it takes a while. It's always in TypeScript. All the major projects I work with, React and Node, end up in TypeScript, and we get a lot of benefits from that. You can create something called interfaces, and that's the types you're looking for. That's why we define a prop coming in from being passed specific way. And like we say with TypeScript, since you've defined the props, you know what the prop looks like in React, then what happens is the moment you instantiate the object, it's now telling you which props it expects, which before it was guessing, like, you know, Visual Studio Code or whatever editor you're doing was guessing what's going on. And so with TypeScript, it knows what's going on. So it knows what to expect in the prop. It knows what type it is. It tells you you're passing in a number when you didn't, or you forgot a particular prop. And it's something that if you don't watch out for, JavaScript will let you do it. You know what I mean? JavaScript is wonderful, lets you do whatever you want, including walk yourself off the cliff, as the saying goes. Excuse me. So it says Anthony says, Anthony, you want to tell us here? You says you want to tell us what you have there written?
Sure. Yeah, so I started using it about 18 months ago.
Nice.
So that was one project. That was a small Angular project, and I don't know if everybody knows, but Angular uses TypeScript by default. And so I was new to Angular and TypeScript. Luckily, it was a small project, and it was a great way to kind of learn a little bit. And then I went from that to another project, which was a massive stack of stuff. It's React on the front end in TypeScript and Apollo GraphQL server in TypeScript, which it's talking to. And I've found it very difficult. I'm totally on board. I'm sold on the finding bugs during development, but man, if you just want to try something out, it makes it really hard to kind of figure out like, oh, is this going to work or not? You feel like you pretty much have to do the whole implementation to figure that out.
You're right. You know how many times I've ended up like, and just like Kevin said, you know, I want to use any, but it's like, no, I should use the right thing. What's helped out a lot for me is the @type sort of npm packages. So if you go @type/express, you're going to get some of the types that you didn't expect Express knew. They've been defined there, so it makes it easy to do some of the things. But you're absolutely right, Anthony. I work with similar to Jean-Marie. I work with Web3. Somebody else also mentioned that they were in Web3, and the project that I got paid for was using something where we're creating the NFTs, right? You know, and we have them in the code. And I said, you know, we got to move it all to TypeScript. And I moved it with TypeScript, and all of a sudden they were like, great, we don't have these types for these, for hard hat and for ethers. And I was like, oh my gosh, and I, you know, struggling all over the world to find them or to create my own types so they match the format that they are. And yeah, and you know, once it's done, the reward, you know, you go like, my goodness, I just spent an hour rewriting the code I had working in JavaScript. So, you know, I can definitely hear where you're talking about. Or an hour, you know, when there was 3 examples I found that did exactly what I was looking for. You know, I don't mean to copy and paste from Stack Overflow, but it's literally what I'm looking to do. I'll change my variables around if they want me to. And then all of a sudden you're realizing, no, TypeScript is pointing at the different errors. And then you just go like, TS ignore, you know what I mean? This one line that will say for this next line, just ignore TypeScript, just let JavaScript be JavaScript. But you fight that with all your might, and then all of a sudden, your code works and it's happy. And so I've been there, Anthony, pulling my hair off, you know what I mean? And then at the same time, seeing the reward of saying like, oh, I wonder what it takes. Oh, here's all the list of the things it takes, or here's the enum that I have to just pass. And all of a sudden I know exactly what it's expecting. I don't have to guess or Google or search documentation. You know what I mean? It's, like when I saw there is a TypeScript, I don't know if you see on YouTube, the one in 100 seconds. It's a particularly fun little YouTube channel with a very fast talking individual. So if you like that, check out TypeScript in 100 seconds. And in the one line, not only do you get the line that I explained from the TypeScript creators about saving yourself a little bit of time, or spending a little bit more time in development to save yourself, through being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning when it is a production error. But also it's the self-documenting code. Instantly your function tells you what it's expecting, and it's telling you what it's going to reply back. And you're like, oh, I know exactly what to get in here, and I know exactly when I'm going to come back, and I don't have to look at the code. When I type in, my variable equals the function, blah, 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 I now know what it's supposed to reply back. So I know exactly what I'm going to get, right? So that's the beauty of it. So I agree with you, Anthony. I'm sold as well. Yes, thank you, Chris. So Chris put in the chat of here, we put in the link to the Farship.io's 100 TypeScript in 100 seconds. Feel free to click on that, and you don't have to watch it now, but you can watch it a little bit later. And you have something else in here. Rod, you have something about a speed comparison. Can you tell us a little bit about that? You said you have a YouTube video about speed comparison. What are they comparing?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was just stumbled on it the other day, and basically, I had never heard of Remix before that. So, I'm quite new to the environment, and he actually talked about a couple different frameworks like Fresh, which is associated with Dino, and
yes.
Basically the rendering, I think that was the one that pretty much dominated all of them. But, I don't know enough about all the intricacies to really basically compare within those, but it looked pretty compelling from an outsider, so to speak.
So one of the things that I sometimes hear is people saying, hey, I don't like JavaScript because it gives me too many options, right? I walk into the supermarket, there's 15 different varieties of peanut butter. I just want 2. I want to know the right peanut butter, pick it up and go home. All I want is peanut butter, and it doesn't make a difference. And there's something to be said about that. Like Ruby on Rails is famous for having, my goodness, what's the PHP? Laravel. Those are famous for like defining. You have to define inside the world, or Django, or Django, I guess it's pronounced. Those, you have to define things the way they want you to define things. And that means that if you're comfortable with it, you can speed through any kind of website that you want to do in a hackathon type speed. And 2 days later, this thing, you made Facebook with all the options you can think about. And that's what they sell you. And that's what Remix sells you and some of the other services. And they're amazing as long as you don't mind only their way. And I feel comfortable enough in my JavaScript that I don't want their way. I'm okay copying somebody else's work, building on the, standing on the shoulders of giants, but sometimes I want to do things my own way, or sometimes I want to know like what's going on. So they literally, we were helping a student that had a project in Django, and she had been hired, and she was grading with that. And I was looking at it, and she had the most mundane of requests. He says, when they fill in the form to create a new user, it will redirect to the other one. And I just want to be able to send an email just before. And I'm like, piece of cake. Let's find out the code that redirects them just before the redirect. We'll add a line or 2 or 15 that adds, sends an email. And we could not do it. I could not figure it out how it is. And I know enough Python to be able to do this. What is going on? And it's just like, too bad. Django has their way. Remix has their way. So it's not for me, but I think it's fantastic. I think it works and all that. So Steve, you're talking about Bun and Node. Round 2. I like that. So
It's the goes
Yeah.
with the YouTube link I put there.
So
Yeah,
definitely
that
check
was
out
the
the YouTube
fire.
that's in there. You're dropping some gems, my friend. I really appreciate that. So you talking more, Marita, about like, we're worrying about it. There is a slight, scare sometimes with people thinking like, I'm barely, I'm learning JavaScript. I'm lower on the ladder than you are, let's say, than Anthony is, and so therefore, do we need to know it right away? You don't need to know it right away, but the earlier you get comfortable with it, the easier it becomes to continue down the route. And I can tell you that I can't tell you all professional projects out there use TypeScript instead of JavaScript, but every company I know that's using Node, it ends up running TypeScript on their work. And even what is even better than that is, one of the things is that once you're comfortable with TypeScript, you can be the person they hire to convert that JavaScript project to TypeScript. You know what I mean? It's tough to do anything new. It's a new language. It's a new changes. And we were saying not TypeScript, but Java at 5.6 or 7.5, and which is totally changed from 7.0 that you learned. It would still be going like, okay, there would still be jobs for the old Java, old JavaScript, but it would be, good to move forward. And so, yeah. Actually, Alex says a lot of jobs describe TypeScript. And like I said, even if they don't, when they mean Node, you get there, or they mean React and you get there, or they mean Angular, and they get there and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, it's TypeScript. And you're like, oh, great. So it's good to learn it. And now you guys all know it. You guys are all experts with that. So.
Actually, if I can chime in, I know I'm not supposed to say this. This is a TypeScript meeting. I've actually worked in JavaScript and TypeScript. So I'm not really convinced that every project out there is actually just TypeScript. It's probably, it might take 10%.
Are using
but it's
TypeScript?
getting traction. It's getting traction. So also JavaScript, right? I mean, instead of bashing or bitching about it, JavaScript was evolved like almost 15 years ago, right? So it's over the time there is a more of need of a static type checking. Back then, JavaScript came in 7 days or 10 days, whenever it was invented, right? So you can't blame the guy or the language. So over the time, there's a more of a necessity towards having a static type checking and functional programming.
Absolutely.
So obviously JavaScript, ECMAScript is more rigid and you cannot change just like that. So it's TypeScript is more of add-on. It's like a, I don't know, cherry on the cake or the toppings on the pizza, right? So that's how I look at it. So they can coexist.
Yes, I agree. I agree completely and all that. The majority of the projects I've ever worked on have been on TypeScript, that have been on work on Node, eventually become TypeScript. Companies like City Furniture, I always want to say Circuit City, City Furniture, Office Depot, whenever they use JavaScript, they mean TypeScript. Microsoft, we've been using TypeScript since forever. Toyota, we were using TypeScript. I haven't worked for Microsoft for a long time, so I shouldn't say we, so most of the places, I guess, if even if they're not there, they're going to move down to
getting traction, right? It's getting traction over the time.
No, I think it's getting more than traction. I think the majority of people are, just like the majority of companies are saying, we need to test our code. We need to have, unit tests at the very minimum, not only, fully, not talking about QA people that test everything, but also, unit tests and integration tests and all that being automated. We have to get into that business as well, right? That's what everybody uses it. I mean, I started in Toyota when I first started working. That was like 3 years ago, and we were using unit tests in TypeScript and JavaScript before we did TypeScript. And so, there's a lot of things we move forward. So absolutely. There is what is it? Yeah. So Larry reminded us that Microsoft proposed types annotations into JavaScript back in March. There's been talk about types in JavaScript for a while, but even if that happens, and we get, or we, if we're TypeScript people, get lucky and they do it the same way, which I think that's the proposition. Obviously, the proposal is that it looks exactly the same way. TypeScript is always going to move forward. And I think everybody that has been TypeScript people, and have even the people that invented TypeScript, they'll be happy to still go and say, we don't need TypeScript anymore because JavaScript has caught up. You know what I mean? That's when it's time to celebrate. It isn't time to, cry about what we could have had or, how they took it away from us. That's what we want to move forward, right? That's the ideal of what's going on in there. At the same time, maybe you'd want to be able to sort of revert back and keep the old JavaScript, JavaScript being the only language that needs to keep track of things that we used to work 20 years ago. Nobody else in other languages needs to do that, right?
Hey,
So,
Damian.
yes, sir.
Have you ever had to interface with C++ or Rust or anything more performant for massive data crunching, or have you felt that JavaScript was plenty? Or no?
I've been the web guy for a long time. Every single job I've had have been, front end and back end. So I've never had any need for that. Having said that, I know that WebAssembly that allows you to simply compile something and make it available instantly without any magic or things like that in the browser. It's as if we had a little binary that we could access. It is how, they've done some amazing things. It is how Figma, that website allows it to do things that apparently it couldn't, or it would have taken too long otherwise. I've seen some amazing things like the famous FFmpeg, a program that's been around for something like 20 years that video edits, converts an MP3 to an MP4, things like that. And they converted it into a WASM, and now it's revolutionary. So I've never had to deal with something that needs so much performance that we simply give up on JavaScript. I've never been there. I've never experienced anything like that. And I'm not talking about in the last 3 years or 4 years because it's so fast, because the M1 Max runs fast. No, I'm talking about 19, 20, 21 years ago. I never saw anything so slow that we went and gave up and said, forget it, we'll just ship out the letter by FedEx and have it shipped down there, So I don't know. I'd love to hear some stuff about that.
No, as I was saying in my chat, right? So JavaScript is more for the web, right? For a second, ignore the Node.js part in the backend, but predominantly JavaScript is for the web. So it's kind of Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt ruling the Hollywood kind of thing, right? So JavaScript is that. So C++ definitely performance oriented. There are a couple of reasons actually why it is performance. C or C++, right? Because the fact that you compile, so without going too much details into how the compilation works, right? There's a two-phase compile and the binary code. So it's basically what you expect. That kind of there's a performance optimization can be done. So that's why C++ is more faster, and Java also trying to in that same space. Whereas JavaScript is more of interpreted language, so it's not in that true compilation where there's no multiple pass per se. So I think compilation is multiple passes, something like that. So in that sense, they're kind of apple and oranges. So I wouldn't compare because the use case is too different. It's like I don't know, Hollywood versus the Bollywood. They're two different languages, right? That's how I would look at that. I don't know if that makes sense.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm not of the belief, and maybe it's never. I've never seen like JavaScript not being able. I've seen it run on different things. Right? There's a very famous. I'm trying to find it. I can't find it. Let's pretend this Raspberry Pi was it. I've seen these little tiny devices where you can make things, and now you can program them in JavaScript. I'm not talking about interfacing with them in JavaScript. Your browser connects to this thing, and this is C++. They're running JavaScript on these things nowadays. And so forget about the fact that this Raspberry Pi that if I connect it, it does run a JavaScript node server on the back end that does a bunch of things for the school as a showcase, right? For a database server, things like that. But I have a feeling that for a long time, every language should be able to do every single thing, right? I can use C# to create mobile apps for iPhone and Android. I can use them to create desktop apps. I could use them to create now with Blazor and WASM. I can code and they become on the front end. I can use them for some of these devices, 10, 15 years ago, and micro.net. And I've never seen what everybody seems to see, and so clearly I'm blind, that there's one language for one purpose. Like, Python does data analytics. And I'm like, then why is the same data analytics libraries available in JavaScript? to play with? No, it's because if you want to do it and you're crazy enough to do it, it seems to work, right? What do you got there, Kevin?
I've actually attended some long back, IBM has IoT, whatever, the Watson,
Yes.
they use a JavaScript, the one you're showing, the Raspberry Pi. So I've actually attended one of the training where they were able to demonstrate JavaScript. So obviously JavaScript, can do whatever, we're talking, IoT
seems
stuff.
to. Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla has a JavaScript someday, who knows?
In this group, we haven't done it because of the COVID. We haven't done it since 2019. No, yeah, 2019 was the last year. But we have a node bot days, right, where we come up with little wheel things. They're all connected with JavaScript, and we all fight them and we build them. And we have a great time. Microsoft sponsors, or used to at least. I haven't talked to them forever. And so I think it's just all these languages can do magical things. It's all which one that you're comfortable with. The answer is always yes. Right?
If I can flip the question, right? So mostly, let's say if you take Amazon or Netflix, right? So the way we actually tackle this speed problem, right? The web performance, we use different, like the first painting, the FCP, and then that's what the web optimization. That's what we try to address the problem there instead of figuring out how to make JavaScript faster, because JavaScript is just interpret. You just interpret it, right? End of the day, it is what it is, right? So that's how we address the website performance problem.
I agree. So if you wouldn't mind, if you can all join me here on for one quick second. I'm not trying to stop the conversation, but I would like to give away some prizes. If you want to go ahead and join me here at, let me get that out of the way, win.floridajs.com. Actually, give me 1 second where I have to set up something before, or else you're going to get some old tickets. So look away from the keyboard. Don't pretend that you're, don't do anything here. I typed, my mouth was talking faster than my typing on my phone. Let's reset that. Okay, there we go. Come join me at win.floridajs.com. You get your tickets. I have for you some licenses from the JetBrains people. These licenses include things like IntelliJ. They include things like WebStorm, the de facto, what I was using 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, before Visual Studio came around. The unbelievable ReSharper from C#, the amazing PyCharm, which is for Python developers. It is the de facto one, the education one. Everybody uses it. So you're welcome to come join me on there. If you get your tickets and you win, I might have even 2 licenses. I'll find out. We'll get at least the first and second place person. And if you go ahead and your ticket comes up, I'll go ahead and send you the license. You don't have to tell me which software you want. You'll simply get a PDF that will show you how to follow the instructions. These are sponsored by the JetBrains people. So it's jetbrains.com. That's the only thing that they do. Anything you can think about here. This is an unbelievable software that connects to all sorts of different databases on your Mac, on your Linux box, on whatever you'd like. If you prefer Rust, if you prefer WebStorm, which is spectacular, PHP Storm, IntelliJ, all the different ones. If you don't like Visual Studio and you want to do your writer, we have that as an option. If you're back in C#, C++, and still living strong and making more money than I've ever had in my life, come join me there. Everybody had their tickets? Let's get some winners. Number 5. Anybody have number 5? I certainly do not see anybody jumping up. Me, Alex. Go ahead and contact me. What I'm going to do is right now put in my email address for you here. Actually, you can put it for everybody else. I'll put it for everybody. This is FloridaJS.com. My email address is Damian@FloridaJS.com. Check out the chat in the Zoom that we're having right now. You will find me. Go ahead and contact me. Let me know your email address so that I can reply to you. If there is a way that you can send an email without an email address, I just realized that made no sense. And then go ahead and let me know. Just in case, who is number 7? If you can contact me, number 7, you're welcome to let me know right now, but just contact me by email, Damian@FloridaJS.com. Woohoo! I like that. Steve, finally, right?
Finally, yeah.
Finally. Now you don't have to come back to these meetings. No. I really appreciate your time, Steve. You're amazing with these things. Contact me, let me know. That's it. That's all I wanted to do as far as giveaways. So the floor is still yours. So anybody wants to ask any questions, otherwise come join us the first Monday of the first Tuesday. What am I saying? Monday? When did we do that? First Tuesday of every single month. If it's not me talking, it's someone even better looking than me, which if that's ever possible, and then maybe it's you. That's why it's possible. So come let me know by email or by any which way. And I'd love to hear from you and what you want to present to us. Otherwise, you're going to have to hear from me. So that's your punishment. Try to see where you can present. If you do want to present, let me know. We'll be here.
Hi, so just off topic from
Yes,
TypeScript.
please, Chris. I love that. Talk to me.
Do you all have physical meetups for FloridaJS?
So we haven't we did one about a year ago, and it just happened that year, which was 2021, we tried it as the first sort of wave was dying off in COVID, and we thought like, it would be fine. I had been to Europe at that time, everything was fine, and one person got it. So we got a little bit scared. But nowadays with the school being open, we might have it at the school, we might have it in other locations as well. But we've been thinking about it.
Well, what was the school that you mentioned? I think I missed that part.
Sure. So I work for Boca Code, so it's up in coding bootcamp up in Boca Raton. You can see them.
Could you post like the address or the website for it?
Sure, bocacode.com. So if you check out the
okay.
website, you can check them out, and you can see what's going on here. I like this. Steve just shared it with us before he had to get going. No, he's still there. The playlist were very good. Get started here. So just remember those things on the right hand side and the chat on my right hand side. Do click on them. You don't have to play them now. I would suggest you don't play them. It's up to you. But they will be gone the second we disconnect on here and all that. So if you're interested in coding boot camps, if you're interested in seeing different things going forward, do reach out to me at bocacode.com. And we'll let you know more about the school. We're starting a new cohort in 3 weeks. That means you become a developer in 13 weeks. So 3 weeks when you start, 10 weeks later. And let us know what you think. And if there is some subjects, Chris, we'd love to have some in-person hearings, meetings, and we will let you know. Definitely check out meetup.com for more details about that.
Okay, yeah, I will. Because I'm actually in Boca as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was looking for meetups, and it was kind of hard to find any for Boca because I don't think the Boca Code meetup page is very active.
Correct. There is check out South Florida Tech Hub.
Okay.
Just Google that.
All right.
Yes, definitely talk to Steve over there. You can see on his GitHub. I'm sorry, the Discord. Check it out there. Check out their amazing organization. They have some meetups. It's every single month, every single day. And as long as Jonathan's not around. Hey, Jonathan, thanks for coming.
Thanks.
So we'll be
the only
here.
thing I was able to find was like down in Miami. So that was like,
yes.
Yeah.
There's a ton of them. A lot of them have gone online, but definitely check out South Florida Tech Hub and go to their meetup page. There's a lot of different events. Some of them are down in Miami. Some of them are up here. There's definitely great ones in there. So definitely check them out. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next month.
Appreciate it. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
See
Bye.
ya.
Bye.